What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So with Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 being delayed into 2023, speculation has just continued to mount online around the limited amount of footage that we have currently. Well, now it looks like a bit of a leak has gotten out there that could give us an idea as to the themes and even mechanics in the game, and we're going to go over that one here today. Also, we are going to be talking about that Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake from Ubisoft, as we got an update around development and doesn't look like things are going very smoothly there. And we're also going to be talking about the VR metaverse stuff, as a new advancement could be getting us closer to that Ready Player One future. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell to keep up with all the updates here on the channel. And we're going to start today with Xbox Game Pass for the month of May. We can head over here to news.xbox.com. We have the card at the top showing all the different titles. Starting tomorrow, May 5th, Trek to Yomi, and I'm looking forward to trying this one out. Cloud, console, and PC. That is a day one release into the service. Citizen Sleeper, that's cloud, console, and PC. Moving to May 10th, Danganronpa 2, that's cloud, console, and PC. We have Ayuden Chronicle Rising, cloud, console, and PC. This War of Mine Final Cut, cloud, console, and PC. And then on May 12th, through EA Play, NHL 22 will be entering the service on console. There are also several games that are actually pretty substantial that are leaving the service starting May 10th. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, the definitive edition, that's cloud and console. And I guess that tells us it was like a 6-month agreement for this to be in the service, since it entered when the entire collection released back in November. And then leaving May 15th, enter the Gungan, Final Fantasy X-10-2 HD Remaster, Remnant from the Ashes, Steep, The Catch, and The Wild at Heart. So yeah, a big drawback for these subscription services is as games enter, you will end up seeing games leave. So unfortunate stuff there if you were trying to check out some of those games. You still have some time to, I guess, at least see if you like them, maybe then even buy into them. But otherwise, I am certainly going to be checking out Trek to Yomi tomorrow on the service. Also, from time to time, we bring up Mother 3. Sometimes there are some interesting rumors around it. Other times, there are a bunch of memes online for it. But it doesn't stop you from bringing up the question with certain people who would be familiar with the idea of it being localized outside of Japan, specifically in the West. And well, we can see this post up. It's transcribed by Nintendo Life, but this took place on an episode of the Kit and Krista podcast with the Mother 3 producer, this from Kamioka, being asked about the idea of, hey, why hasn't Mother 3 been released outside of Japan? They say, personally, I think the biggest selling point of Mother 3 is Atoi's unique writing style. Translating the charm and nuances of his writing into other languages is quite a challenge, and maybe that's why it's taken so long to consider international releases of Mother 3. Although, we have seen Mother 1 and 2 get translated and released outside of Japan, Earthbound Beginnings, all that. So I don't necessarily know if it's the nuances around the writing. I just think there are certain themes and subjects that will be viewed as controversial in Mother 3 that Nintendo not interested in navigating right now online. Obviously, they work around their image as Nintendo, so they're like, you know what? It's the sales that we project for Mother 3, not really worth that headache right now in dealing with that online. So unfortunately, I just don't know if it's ever going to happen, especially not anytime soon, which is a shame because one of the coolest releases we could see is Mother 3 as a cartridge on the Switch. Oh, and for all of you controller collectors, we did have another controller variant or just color announced for the Xbox. You can see it here. This is the wireless controller color Deep Pink. It's available for $64.99. Looks like it's available now. So they basically announced it yesterday and just went up for sale immediately, so you can place your order there, or they say you can find a retailer for it. The thing with these controller variants from Microsoft, I found myself to just be less interested in them, mostly because we have the Xbox Design Lab for controllers, so if you wanted a pink controller, I guess you could have just made one at any time. And to be honest, I'd rather just put the money into one that's a more customized controller overall. But hey, if you're someone who is looking for a pink Xbox Series X controller, they're now available. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with The Legend of Zelda. We have a couple of rumors and one leak that appears to have gotten out there. Let's start with the rumors around that double pack that's come up for couple of years now, I feel like. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. We can see this posted up. This from Nintendo Life, transcribing Jeff Grubb on his YouTube channel, saying they want to have a Zelda thing every year. They've been holding on to this. Why wouldn't they just put it out this year? And if they don't put this out or some other Zelda thing this year, instead of just waiting for Breath of the Wild 2, I just will not understand. I do think this game, as much as it was a joke in the Mega 64 video, I do believe it does actually come out in October. I think we get that in October. I think we get a Metroid Prime Remaster in November, and I think we get Advance Wars 1 and 2 in December. Wow, we're gonna wait that long for Advance Wars 1 and 2 to come out. That is interesting to consider, that being pushed basically to the end of the year. Like I was kind of thinking, Nintendo might just release it right at the end of 2022, just push it out the door and then just walk into 2023 for that game. But I wouldn't be shocked to see this collection come out. We've seen now Nintendo basically admit, yes, they hold on to games. We saw it with New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe on the Switch, where that was found to have just been sitting on Nintendo's servers for months. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 got pushed up a couple of months. You don't do that with a game that's coming down to the wire. You do that with a game that's pretty much done and you're just kind of hanging out, or you're pretty sure that it's going to be ready here any time now. So it wouldn't shock me to hear that Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, this little remastered collection, has just been ready, and they're just kind of holding onto it just in case Breath of the Wild 2 had to get pushed maybe back into 2023, and here we are. So that's probably one we'll see announced a month from now, say during their E3 conference, or their what would be E3 conference, I guess now just their summer conference that Jeff Keighley will say is part of Summer Games Fest. Although who knows, Nintendo usually does like a fall direct even, so maybe they do something where they announce it there and then like a month or so later it comes out. But either way, I do think something Zelda related would come out this year, and that seems like a very likely candidate. But let's talk about Breath of the Wild 2, because there was a very intriguing leak that came out from a voice actor. Now, I am going to be very vague around this leak because I don't necessarily want to spoil certain character names or anything like that, since I feel like there are people who are going to buy Breath of the Wild and go through it when we get a bit more hype and marketing around Breath of the Wild 2, or maybe just haven't been able to get to it yet, or they get a Switch this Christmas or holiday or what have you there. But let's take a look once again at Nintendo Life, where they said Emmanuel from Lega Hyrule, an Italian Zelda fan community, recently had the chance to interview one of the Italian voice actors working on Breath of the Wild 2. And I'll link to this article down below that has the video, but essentially what we found out is the voice actor will also be voicing a character that would have been thousands of years in the past from what we would be experiencing, say, in Breath of the Wild 2, which once again brings up the idea of some sort of dimensional shifting or time travel. And I mean, we've seen similar things in previous Zelda games, where obviously Light World, Dark World, and we see mechanics get introduced for sequels like Majora's Mask, where we get that whole Groundhog Day thing. You keep going back in time over and over again until you can essentially stop the moon from crashing in and all of this. So I'm not shocked to hear that we could be seeing something time travel related, because whatever the mechanic is, it somehow plays into the title, because they won't even tell us what it's called, because apparently if they do, it'll give away one of the big core concepts of the game. I also do want to mention the possibility that some of these lines that would have been taking place well into the past could be lines recorded for big flashbacks, different story moments there, right? Like that's always possible, and that wouldn't necessarily play into the mechanics or themes around this game. But based on what we're seeing, it wouldn't surprise me if we did have time travel be something that even plays into different puzzles, and like that could be pretty cool. And I do think they want to introduce a mechanic that's jarring enough to make Breath of the Wild 2, or the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, feel like it's its own game, like it's completely separate. Kind of like how Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time feel like completely separate games, even though Majora's Mask is like a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time. But one thing's for sure, I am very curious to see what this game is all about and why they're being so secretive around that title. Next up, let's talk about the metaverse. It's a word that keeps coming up from a lot of execs high up at these different gaming companies, and we're all trying to figure out exactly what this thing is going to look like when we're 10 or 15 years in the future, but everyone at least wants to stake their claim in that they are looking into it. Well, there was a video that popped up showing off some technology that's being, at least in the conceptual phase, and researched for VR, and I gotta say, I saw this and it was a little shocking that we're already getting to this point with it. Take a look at this. This was a video posted up, and we also have some talk around the technology being used here. This is a custom 7nm chip to run the Codec Avatar app efficiently on virtual and augmented reality devices. They say augmented reality or virtual reality devices aim to connect people in the metaverse with photorealistic virtual avatars, referred to as codec avatars, delivering a high visual performance for codec avatar workloads. However, it is a challenging task for mobile SoCs as AR/VR devices have limited power and form factor constraints. You're seeing this right. So the headset they have on right now has several cameras looking at different parts of their face, and in turn allows you to essentially react in VR in real time. So like your expression can change, like your eyebrows can move around your mouth and all these different muscles in your face, and you can make, I guess, just a visual representation of yourself while you're sitting there reacting to things in this virtual space. So the idea, of course, being anonymous in VR for business meetings wouldn't really be possible if you have to have this certain headset on or anything there, or if it ends up getting to a point where, yes, it can run off of mobile system on chips, and it's basically part of the Quest VR 5 or something. Like, I feel like this is pretty far down the road, and right now it's being powered off of like really high-end machines and not using what you see in like the Quest 2 as an example. But this is some like shocking stuff to see right now. Like, we are getting closer and closer to that Ready Player One world where the virtual space and like real life starts to merge together. The fact that you put on a headset and like you're actually visually represented in the virtual space is kind of jarring. Next up, let's talk about Prince of Persia: Sands of Time Remake. We all know how this went down. Going into Ubisoft Forward, it was kind of leaked out that it was going to happen. People got really excited. Then we saw it, and then the disappointment just kind of ensued. And after that, they decided, you know what? We're just going to delay this thing indefinitely. Well, now we have another update on it. We can see this posted up, this over on the Prince of Persia Twitter account, saying, "Hello, Prince of Persia fans. The development of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time Remake will now be led by Ubisoft Montreal, the very birthplace of the epic Sands of Time trilogy. This decision is an important step, and the team building upon the work achieved by Ubisoft Pune and Ubisoft Mumbai will now take the time they need to regroup on the scope of the game to deliver you the best experience for this remake of an all-time classic when it's ready. We want to thank you all for your continuous support and the patience throughout the development. Rest assured that we will update you on the progress in a future update." So look, it's pretty obvious there have been some development issues as we've gone along with this game. And when they first showed it, there was a reaction to it because it didn't look like it was like a big time remake for newer platforms, right? Like, we're talking like the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series. And yes, it looked like it was going to be on the Switch. That popped up on the website there and everything, but it didn't look like it was like a higher quality remake for Sands of Time. It looked like Ubisoft was kind of phoning it in, and the fans let them know it with that reaction. But it just seems like the budget that Ubisoft had provided, the different studios there, just wasn't cutting it. And they tried to, looked like, just delay it and definitely work on it some more. And I guess Ubisoft decided, you know what? We're basically bringing this in to our studio that started the whole thing with Sands of Time. And I mean, Ubisoft Montreal tackles some of the larger projects for Ubisoft. I mean, Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, Rainbow Six. That's where those games come from. So to take Prince of Persia: Sands of Time Remake and move it in there tells me that Ubisoft isn't just pushing this thing out the door. They're taking it very seriously, which kind of gives me hope that maybe there is a future where Prince of Persia makes a serious return. As for when this game is coming out, I mean, who knows? It almost sounds like they're, I don't want to say scrapping and restarting development, but when you switch studios like that and they make it known, it's letting us know that it's going to be a bit. I'm thinking a couple of years. Yeah, I know that's kind of disappointing because it was really exciting to hear that Sands of Time was getting a full-on remake, and we would have been playing it, by now, right? Originally planned. So unfortunate stuff there, but I guess we'll keep an eye out for Ubisoft whenever they're ready to show it again. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of comparisons to what was originally shown and what we do get shown in an updated look, and if it was worth all of this time in development. I will say Prince of Persia: Sands of Time did eventually reach like 14 million units sold. When it first came out, it had a hard time selling, and they actually gave away like Splinter Cell with it. Yeah, it was is an odd time then. But it went on to do pretty well. It's had a lot of exposure as a series, and it kind of feels like Ubisoft wants to do everything they can to get this as right as possible to give Prince of Persia a serious shot. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Wii Sports and the Wii. We know that was a massive move for Nintendo to have Wii Sports packaged in as just a game you got with your Wii, because it really showed off what the Wii was exactly and what it was able to do with all of those different mini games. And I mean, come on. Bowling is an absolute classic. It's a game that people look back on the Wii and immediately think of. It's what a lot of us gravitated towards to try out the remote for the first time. Maybe tennis or boxing, but bowling's the classic, right? Anyway, it looks like there was a point in time where Wii Sports was just going to be a separate purchase and the Wii was just going to release by itself. This was shared by Reggie Fils-Aimé in his newest book, and we can see this over on Nintendo Life saying Fils-Aimé pushed for the bundle initially company president Satoru Iwata turned the proposal down. Nintendo does not give away precious content for free. Intriguingly though, Fils-Aimé explains that the initial suggestion led to a counterproposal from Shigeru Miyamoto. In a meeting, Miyamoto presented an early version of Wii Play as an alternative, though Fils-Aimé countered to say that it didn't feel like a complete experience compared to Wii Sports, and in that moment suggested it could be bundled with Wii Remote instead of as a retail package. Having Wii Play effectively turned down for bundling with the system was apparently a rare occasion of Miyamoto being visibly unhappy. And I mean, it looks like Reggie was right. Who knows what, I guess, an alternate timeline where the Wii just released by itself without Wii Sports. Because they were coming off the GameCube, they had this massive change in concept because the GameCube competed with the Xbox and the PlayStation when it came to just raw power, and it was basically a straightforward gaming device, whereas the Wii was Nintendo trying to do something completely different and just more or less lean into the idea of being innovative with things like motion controls that, I mean, Sony and Microsoft ended up trying to replicate with their own ideas around Connect and Move and all of this. But if Wii Sports wasn't there when you first bought it, you may have passed on it and not really understood the whole concept of the remote when you got something like, say, at the time we had Twilight Princess with the Wii, and that was a great game, but you really just kind of threw the controller around. I think the idea of it being a more mainstream device and pulling in a general audience that wouldn't play Zelda, but would play bowling and tennis is what really set up the Wii for success that generation. So I know Reggie is painting this in the best light possible from his perspective, but hey, if he was really pushing for it and got it done, hey, hats off to Reggie. It was probably the right move. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, do you think someone will buy Square Enix within the next 2 years? 60% said yes, 40% said no. I do think it's kind of a toss-up right now, and I sort of am leaning towards someone coming in and buying Square, especially now that they've offloaded a lot of expenses from their books. I mean, 1,100 employees at these different studios being transferred over to Embracer from studios that weren't making them much money at all. They weren't happy with how Shadow of the Tomb Raider seemed to turn out, and they weren't happy, clearly, with Guardians of the Galaxy or Avengers. They made that very well known there. So them kind of moving away from that and really consolidating and focusing on what makes them money, which are basically releases out of their Japanese studios, makes sense for them if they want to be profitable, and then maybe, hey, look to sell. It's very possible. I said 2 years just to give enough time because this deal with Embracer won't close until like the end of summer, and then that's when they might really start looking around to see what kind of offers they'd get. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Throw saying, I've recently replayed Soul Reaver 2 and Legacy of Kain Defiance, and while the combat systems are certainly not up to current game standards, the potential for that series now is incredible. A tight combat system with exploration elements and puzzles, kind of like Jedi Fallen Order or God of War, would be amazing today. The storytelling and voice acting from that series still holds up as the best of the PS2 era. I have not played Soul Reaver 2 in a long time. I might actually check it out again because I'll tell you this, if we do get a remaster from Embracer Group from one of their many studios, I don't think they're going to do much to the gameplay, and what we have now with combat on the PS2 is probably what's going to show up in some sort of cheap remaster, and they would mostly be doing that, I feel like, to test the waters and get some easier money back for this purchase that they've made. But I think they're going to dig into some of these IPs that they got from Square and look to do several different remasters. So either I check it out now or I probably check it out in a couple of years on the Xbox, the PlayStation, or the Switch. But I think I am going to go back and check it out on my backwards compatible PS3. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Whereas Breath of the Wild 2, give me your best theories around this game and what we could finally have revealed to us next year when they're ready to show it. Then also, what about Prince of Persia Sands of Time Remake? What do you think about this update and then moving this game to Ubisoft Montreal? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.